Welcome to the HBR IdeaCast from Harvard Business Review. I'm Susie Jackson. With me today is Melba Duncan, author of the May 2011 article, The Case for Executive Assistants. Melba, thank you so much for being here today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
In your article, you write that some companies are drawn to the egalitarian structure that not having an executive assistant provides to an office. That if you see a boss changing the copy cartridge himself, somehow you have this we're all in it together kind of feeling. But that makes no economic sense, you argue in your article. Can you explain that to us a bit?
Well, because you have someone who is working at a very high level, doing what others at a lower level should be hired to do. And therefore, you're sort of drawing against someone's ability to be productive. I think it's important for companies to look at the executive, the needs of the executive, and how that gets targeted to the needs of the company. And then the executive assistant are those who support those individuals and how they get targeted to the needs of the company. So having an executive make a photocopy, unless it's on the spur of the moment, to me is not a very productive way or a standard that any company should really adhere to.
Do you find that executive assistants, their presence in the office does make a difference though?
Oh, without doubt. This is the individual who is able to discern what's happening before it happens and is able to step into that circumstance and create an environment that is smooth and without interruption. At the same time, you're managing a whole host of complicated expectations. You manage the need of the executive from a personal level, if required. You manage the needs of a company because you know what your role is, and you manage the functions that you're there to do, which is to provide support for executives. So without doubt, these are by far the most valuable, I think, and most productive individuals, and they don't get the recognition that they're entitled to. So I'm a little bit concerned about that as well.
So you were saying these are very valuable, productive people, but beyond those qualities, what does make a good executive assistant or a great executive assistant?
The ability to manage temperaments, to know, first is to get to know the executive and to know that person's habits, likes, dislikes. Second is to get to understand the culture that you're in and to be able to use those leadership skills that you have to advance others in the organization. Third is to be able to see, as one executive has said to me, see around corners. So you know what's going to happen. And you know that because your experiences enables you to have that sixth sense, that intuitive sense of where can I look to for the problems to happen and what can I do to offset them. These are individuals who have come up through the ranks the hard way. They've learned some very hard lessons. There is no formal educational process for the executive assistant. So everything you've learned, you've made a mistake, you've captured that mistake, and you don't repeat it again. These are people who think for the executive. They can be not a block, they're not an impediment. What they are is they encourage the workflow to happen. They use judgment, tact, diplomacy, discretion.
You mentioned that executive assistant needs to be, in effect, the manager of the entire office. But in your article, you also write that they kind of need to be the manager of their boss as well. You use the terms reverse mentoring and business partnerships. Can you explain a little bit about what you mean by those things?
I think it's you provide the guidance and you provide the resources to keep these executives or the executive to whom you report on track. But you're not doing it in a way that suggests that I'm in charge. So there's a kind of subtlety in managing those needs. And I think keeping on point is so important. You know, I've known assistants who will argue a point. It's not about arguing. You don't need to be right or you don't need to be wrong. You just need to make sure you're doing what needs to be done. Executives don't need to be managed necessarily. They shouldn't be told they're being managed. It should just happen. It's time for the meeting. I have the portfolio of information. Everyone who's attending the meeting, I've reviewed every single thing that's in front of you, and I know that it's accurate and everyone's on time, and let's get you there on time. But you're not really being domineering in that relationship. You're being more of a partner and more of a friend. Mm-hmm. And you know when that person is having a good day from when they're not having a good day. You know when to take someone out of a meeting and say, not now, tomorrow. All that's done sort of behind the scenes. but it's never where you step in the place of the executive. It's not, that's inappropriate.
You also write that younger managers sometimes have trouble with having an executive assistant at first because they're so used to scheduling things themselves. They're self-sufficient with their calendars and travel and whatnot. Can you explain a little bit about how a younger manager can successfully delegate to an executive assistant?
Younger executives who believe that technology is really the answer, and because they are very compatible with that function, they feel, well, I don't really need the support. If they were to understand that having someone else plan their trips, having someone else set up their meetings, having someone else track their emails, hundreds by the day, having them sorted out and giving you just a refined product at the end of the day, if they would realize the time saving and the frustration that that would alleviate from what they have to do every single day, they would see the value of this. But until they get to that point, and until we educate them to understand, yes, you need to get a person to do this, and that will enable you to do other things that you're supposed to be doing.
Something that not just younger executives might have trouble with, but even a seasoned executive, is where to draw the line between personal and professional help. One of the commenters on your article on our website asked the question of where do you draw that line? Is it beneficial for the executive assistant to have knowledge into the executive's personal life? Is the line drawn at, say, picking up dry cleaning or managing other kind of day-to-day personal issues?
This is a partnership, and the role and the function is determined by that executive. When someone gets hired, when someone comes to us to hire an executive assistant, the question that I will always ask is, all right, you want the best and the brightest and the best educated. What will that person be doing every single day? Well, Melba, I need that person to do, what I need in my business, but I also have a family. So the person that I would send to that client is perfectly content to manage the life of a busy executive, including the family, which is whatever goes along with that, and manage the life of his or her relationship in business. It is a choice that you make, and it is a compatible choice. At most senior levels, it becomes truly an aspect of the position, because you have to know what's happening in that person's life 24/7. And that means you have to get to know the family, their needs, their likes, dislikes. It puts you right there in the center of that person's life.
Melba, thanks so much for teaching us more about getting that perfect relationship.
Thank you.
That was Melba Duncan, author of the 2011 article, The Case for Executive Assistants. For more, visit hbr.org.